Picture this. You are sitting in your favorite chair, a cup of coffee growing cold beside you, the afternoon light filtering through the window. The house is quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of abandonment, but the gentle, restful quiet of a space that is entirely your own. Outside, the world is rushing. Cars are honking. People are hurrying from one obligation to another. Conversations are being had that no one will remember tomorrow. And you are perfectly still, perfectly content, perfectly at home. Society has a habit of looking at an older man who prefers staying at home and immediately assuming something is wrong. They see a quiet lifestyle and call it loneliness. They notice he no longer attends every gathering, every celebration, or every social event, and they conclude that age has somehow stolen his happiness. Friends encourage him to get out more. Family members worry that he is becoming isolated. But what if they have completely misunderstood what is really happening? What if the man who chooses his own company over the noise of the crowd has not given up on life, but has finally figured out what gives life genuine meaning? The truth is far more fascinating than most people realize. After decades of chasing careers, meeting expectations, solving other people's problems, and constantly proving himself to the world, something begins to change. His priorities shift. The noise that once felt exciting gradually becomes exhausting, while the peace he once overlooked becomes incredibly valuable. This is not about fear. It is not about depression, and it certainly is not about losing the desire to live. It is about reaching a stage of life where peace becomes more attractive than constant activity. The mature masculine mind begins to value quality over quantity, depth over distraction, and authenticity over appearances. What looks like withdrawal from the outside may actually be the beginning of inner freedom. There are 7 powerful psychological reasons that explain this transformation, and why what many people mistake for isolation is often one of the greatest signs of emotional maturity. The first reason is something that most people completely misunderstand. Choosing solitude is not the same as suffering from loneliness. Those two things are often treated as if they mean the same, but psychologically, they are worlds apart. As the poet May Sarton so beautifully captured, loneliness is the poverty of self. Solitude is the richness of self. A senior man who enjoys spending time alone is not necessarily disconnected from life. In many cases, he has finally become comfortable with himself. After decades of navigating success and failure, raising a family, building a career, and facing disappointments that few people ever see, he reaches a point where silence no longer feels uncomfortable. Instead, it feels like home. Think about how many younger men constantly keep themselves busy. If they are not working, they are scrolling through their phones. If they are not online, they are looking for another event, another conversation, another distraction. For many people, being alone with their thoughts feels unsettling because it forces them to confront emotions they have spent years avoiding. But something remarkable happens with many older men. Life teaches lessons that no book ever can. They begin making peace with old regrets. They stop replaying every mistake they ever made. They learn to forgive themselves for opportunities they missed and decisions they wish they could change. Little by little, the internal conflict begins to quiet down. That is why sitting alone in a peaceful home does not feel empty to them. It feels restorative. The outside world often mistakes this quiet lifestyle for sadness because many people cannot imagine enjoying their own company. They are projecting their own fear of silence onto someone who has learned to embrace it. The senior man is not escaping from life. He is enjoying the rare privilege of no longer needing constant noise to feel complete. The philosopher Paul Tillich, reflecting on this distinction, wrote that loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is a prison, but solitude can be liberating. A man who has earned the right to be still is not imprisoned by his home. He is liberated by it. There is another reason so many older men find comfort within the walls of their own home, and it has nothing to do with losing interest in people. It has everything to do with becoming more selective about where their energy goes. When you are young, you often believe every invitation deserves a yes. You attend gatherings you do not really enjoy, spend hours in conversations that go nowhere, and tolerate relationships that leave you emotionally drained simply because that is what everyone expects. For years, many men keep showing up, not because they want to, but because they feel obligated. Eventually, something changes. A man begins to realize that his time is no longer unlimited. Every afternoon, every weekend, and every meaningful conversation becomes more valuable than it once was. He stops measuring life by how many places he visits and starts measuring it by how peaceful he feels when the day is over. That shift changes everything. Suddenly, noisy environments lose their appeal. Endless small talk becomes exhausting instead of entertaining. Gossip, unnecessary conflict, and superficial conversations no longer feel worth the emotional investment. He is not rejecting people because he dislikes them. He is simply choosing not to spend his remaining years on interactions that add little value to his life. His home becomes a place where he does not have to pretend. There are no social masks to wear, no expectations to satisfy, and no pressure to impress anyone. Instead, he can enjoy a good book, tend to his garden, listen to music, or simply sit in complete silence without feeling that he should be somewhere else. To people watching from the outside, it may appear that he is withdrawing from life. In reality, he is withdrawing from unnecessary noise so he can invest more deeply in the things that truly matter. He is not choosing isolation, he is choosing peace. And for many senior men, that is one of the greatest freedoms they have ever experienced. As the philosopher Blaise Pascal observed, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. The man who has mastered the art of sitting quietly has solved more problems than he ever could by running from them. The third reason many senior men enjoy staying at home is something few people ever consider. Home is the one place where they no longer have to perform. For most of a man's adult life, he is expected to play a series of roles. At work, he must be dependable. Around friends, he must appear confident. Within his family, he is often expected to solve problems, remain calm under pressure, and carry responsibilities without complaint. Whether anyone says it out loud or not, the world constantly asks him to prove his value. That kind of pressure does not disappear overnight. It follows him for decades. Eventually, however, retirement arrives. The children become adults. Career ambitions begin to fade into the background, and something remarkable happens. For the first time in many years, he no longer feels the need to wake up each morning trying to meet everyone else's expectations. His home becomes more than just a building. It becomes a place where titles no longer matter. Inside those walls, he is not judged by his income, his profession, or the achievements listed on a resume. He does not have to compete with anyone, impress anyone, or constantly demonstrate his usefulness. He can simply exist without feeling the need to justify his presence. That freedom is incredibly powerful. Many people mistakenly believe staying home means a man has become less ambitious. In reality, many senior men have simply reached a stage where they no longer define themselves by what they produce, but by who they are. They discover that their worth was never tied to endless productivity in the first place. So when an older man chooses the comfort of his own home over another crowded event, he is not escaping responsibility. He is embracing authenticity. After spending much of his life fulfilling roles that society assigned to him, he is finally allowing himself to live without wearing emotional armor every single day. And for many men, that feeling is one of the greatest rewards that later life has to offer. The philosopher Michel de Montaigne, who wrote extensively about the art of living well, viewed his home as a sanctuary where he could find rest and peace amidst the storms of life, while also creating an inner sanctuary within his own soul. The older man who stays home has built both. His house is his refuge, and his soul is his fortress. The fourth reason senior men enjoy staying at home is that it gives them something the outside world rarely can: the space to think deeply about life. When you are younger, life moves at an incredible pace. You are focused on deadlines, paying bills, raising children, building a career, and solving one challenge after another. Days become weeks, weeks become years, and before you realize it, you have spent decades moving from one responsibility to the next without ever slowing down long enough to ask yourself the bigger questions. Later in life, that urgency begins to fade. For many older men, staying home creates the quiet environment they need to reflect on the journey they have already traveled. They think about the decisions that shaped their lives, the lessons they learned through hardship, and the moments they wish they had appreciated more. Instead of constantly looking ahead, They begin to understand the value of looking within. This is not about living in the past, it is about making peace with it. Without the endless distractions of traffic, crowded schedules, and constant social demands, the mind finally has room to breathe. In that silence, many senior men discover a level of clarity they never experienced during their busiest years. They begin to understand what truly mattered, what did not, and what kind of legacy they hope to leave behind. Their home becomes more than a comfortable place to live. It becomes a place where gratitude grows, wisdom deepens, and perspective becomes clear with each passing year. The quiet is not empty. It gives their thoughts the freedom to settle. What others mistake for inactivity is often one of the most meaningful periods of a man's life. While the outside world continues rushing from one distraction to another, he is using the peace of his own home to strengthen his mind, reflect on his purpose, and appreciate the life he spent decades building. The Roman philosopher Cicero, reflecting on the harvest of old age, wrote that it is the recollection and abundance of blessing previously secured. In the quiet of his home, a man gathers that harvest. He counts his blessings not in currency, but in memory, in love, in the quiet satisfaction of a life that has meaning. The fifth reason many senior men enjoy staying at home is one that outsiders often underestimate. Home gives them the freedom to rediscover their creativity. When a man is in the middle of his working years, most of his mental energy is directed toward responsibilities. He solves problems at work, meets deadlines, provides for his family, and spends countless hours helping other people achieve shared goals. By the end of the day, there is often very little energy left for the things he genuinely enjoys. Retirement changes that. For the first time in decades, his time belongs to him again. Suddenly, he can spend an afternoon building something in the workshop, caring for a garden, reading history, writing down memories, restoring old furniture, or learning a skill he never had the opportunity to explore. To someone passing by, these activities may seem ordinary. They might even assume he is simply trying to fill the hours. But that is far from the truth. These moments become expressions of freedom. He is not creating to impress anyone or earn recognition. He is not looking for applause, promotions, or financial rewards. He creates because the process itself brings satisfaction. Every project, no matter how small, reminds him that life is not measured only by productivity. It can also be measured by curiosity, craftsmanship, and the simple joy of making something with his own hands. His home becomes more than a place of rest. It becomes a workshop for the mind, a studio for new ideas, and a space where imagination can flourish without deadlines or expectations. After years of using his abilities to meet the demands of the world, he is finally able to use them for himself. That is why so many older men find deep fulfillment within the quiet walls of their own home. They are not passing time, they are reclaiming a part of themselves that life once forced them to set aside. The poet Robin Sharma captured this beautifully when he wrote, "In stillness lives wisdom, in quiet you'll find peace, in solitude you'll remember yourself." The older man who stays home is not losing himself, he is remembering who he truly is. The sixth reason many senior men enjoy staying at home is something that becomes increasingly valuable with age. Home gives them complete control over their environment. When you step outside your front door, you immediately surrender a certain amount of control. You deal with traffic, crowded stores, loud restaurants, long lines, unexpected delays, and people whose attitudes can affect your mood without warning. Even a simple trip can become mentally draining because so much of your day depends on circumstances you cannot control. After decades of living in that unpredictable world, many older men begin to appreciate something they once overlooked, the quiet stability of home. Within their own space, they decide how the day unfolds. They choose when to wake up, what music to listen to, whether they want complete silence or a favorite television program playing in the background. They can enjoy a peaceful morning with a cup of coffee, read without interruption, or simply sit by a window and watch the day pass without feeling rushed. More importantly, they decide who has access to their peace. As people grow older, they often become far more protective of their emotional energy. They no longer feel obligated to entertain unnecessary drama, endless complaints, or relationships that consistently leave them feeling exhausted. Their home becomes a place where calm is protected rather than constantly disturbed. This is not about shutting people out. It is about recognizing that peace has become one of life's greatest treasures. A senior man understands that his energy is limited, and he wants to spend it on people and experiences that genuinely enrich his life. His home allows him to create an atmosphere that reflects those priorities. It becomes a place where his mind can relax, his body can recover, and his spirit can remain undisturbed by the constant demands of the outside world. For him, staying home is not about avoiding life. It is about protecting the quality of the life he has worked so hard to build. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who knew something about the weight of responsibility, wrote that nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. For the older man, that retreat is not just in his soul, but in the four walls he has made his own. He has built a sanctuary that reflects the peace he has cultivated within. The seventh and final reason many senior men love staying at home is perhaps the most misunderstood of them all. They have learned the difference between loneliness and solitude. Those words are often used as if they mean the same thing, but they describe two completely different experiences. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being emotionally disconnected, even when you are surrounded by people. Solitude, on the other hand, is the peaceful decision to spend time with yourself because your own company is enough. That distinction changes everything. Many people have experienced the strange emptiness of sitting in a crowded room while feeling completely unseen. They have attended family gatherings where no meaningful conversation took place, worked alongside dozens of colleagues without forming genuine connections, or spent years in relationships where they still felt emotionally alone. The senior man understands this reality better than most. He knows that simply being around people does not automatically create happiness. What matters is the quality of the connection, not the number of people in the room. That is why he no longer fears an empty house. To him, silence is not something that needs to be filled, it is something to be appreciated. His home becomes a sanctuary where he can think clearly, enjoy simple routines, and experience contentment without depending on constant entertainment or social validation. He has reached a stage where his happiness no longer rises and falls based on invitations, crowded calendars, or the opinions of other people. The philosopher Hannah Arendt explained the difference between the productive solitude of the life of the mind and a more dreadful kind of loneliness. In loneliness, you exist as a mere object and not as an active thinking being. But in productive solitude, you keep good company with yourself. The older man who stays home keeps excellent company. He is in the presence of a man he has come to respect, a man who has survived, learned, and grown. This is the freedom that so many people misunderstand. They assume he is isolated because they imagine they would feel lonely in the same situation. But they are judging his life through their own fears instead of his reality. The senior man stays home not because he has withdrawn from the world, but because he has finally discovered that peace begins within. Once a man becomes comfortable in his own company, he no longer needs constant noise to remind him that his life has meaning. By now, you may have noticed that every reason we have discussed points toward one powerful truth. The older man who enjoys staying at home is not shrinking his world, he is refining it. When he was younger, life demanded constant movement. There were careers to build, bills to pay, children to raise, and responsibilities that rarely left room for rest. Much of his time belonged to other people. His schedule was filled with obligations, and his value was often measured by how much he could produce or provide. But later in life, that perspective begins to change. He realizes that time has become his most precious possession. Unlike money, it cannot be earned back. Every hour spent in unnecessary conflict, meaningless conversation, or exhausting social expectations is an hour he will never recover. That realization transforms the way he chooses to live. Instead of asking, "How can I stay busier?" he begins asking, "What truly deserves my time?" That single question reshapes his entire lifestyle. He chooses meaningful conversations over endless chatter. He values a peaceful afternoon over a crowded schedule. He discovers that fulfillment does not always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from finally having the freedom to do less and doing it intentionally. Many people struggle to understand this because modern society often celebrates busyness as if it is proof of a successful life. An older man knows better. Experience has taught him that a full calendar does not always create a full heart. So when he spends another quiet evening at home, he is not watching life passing by. He is living it exactly the way he chooses. After decades of meeting the world's expectations, he has finally reached a stage where he no longer feels the need to impress anyone. His greatest luxury is not excitement, it is peace. And he has learned that peace is something worth protecting every single day. As we come to the end of this discussion, it is worth remembering one important thing. Not every older man who enjoys staying at home is the same. Some still love traveling. Some enjoy meeting friends every weekend. Others find happiness volunteering, exploring new places, or spending time with family. There is no single way to grow older well. But for many senior men, home eventually becomes something much deeper than a place to sleep. It becomes a place where they have earned the right to live life on their own terms. After decades of responsibilities, expectations, deadlines, and constant pressure, they finally discover that fulfillment is not found in always doing more. It is found in protecting the peace they have worked a lifetime to create. They no longer feel the need to chase every invitation, attend every gathering, or prove their worth through endless activity. They have learned that a meaningful life is not measured by how often you leave your house, but by how much peace you carry within it. So the next time you see an older man who genuinely enjoys the quiet comfort of his own home, do not be too quick to feel sorry for him. He may not be lonely at all. He may simply have discovered something that many people spend their entire lives searching for, a life free from unnecessary noise, unnecessary pressure, and unnecessary expectations. What appears to be an ordinary home may actually be his sanctuary, his place of reflection, and the environment where he feels most like himself. The Greek philosopher Plato observed that old age has a great sense of calm and freedom. When the passions have relaxed their hold and have escaped, not from one master, but from many. The man who has found peace in his own home has escaped many masters. The master of ambition, the master of approval, the master of endless striving. And in that escape, he has found something far more valuable than anything the world could offer. He has found himself. Consider for a moment how this transformation might unfold in a real life. Imagine a man named Robert. At 55, Robert retired from a demanding career in engineering. For 30 years, his life had been a blur of deadlines, meetings, and constant travel. He was good at his job, respected by his colleagues, and well compensated. But somewhere along the way, he lost touch with himself. He did not have hobbies. He did not have close friends outside of work. His marriage had survived, but it had been more of a partnership of convenience than a deep emotional connection. When retirement came, Robert was terrified. He had no idea what to do with himself. His first instinct was to stay busy. He took on projects around the house. He volunteered at a local charity. He joined a social club. But none of it felt right. He was still performing, still trying to prove his worth, still measuring his days by how much he had accomplished. Then, slowly, something began to shift. He stopped filling every hour with activity. He started spending more time at home, just being. He discovered the pleasure of reading a book in the afternoon sun. He took up gardening, not because he needed to produce vegetables, but because he enjoyed the feel of soil in his hands. He started cooking, not because he had to, but because he found satisfaction in creating something from scratch. His wife noticed the change. He was calmer, more present, more at peace. He was no longer trying to be the man he thought he should be. He was finally allowing himself to be the man he actually was. Robert had discovered what so many older men eventually learn. Home is not a prison. It is a sanctuary. It is a place where the masks can come off, where the performance can end, where a man can simply be. His story is not unique. It is being lived out in homes across the country by men who have earned the right to be still, to be quiet, to be at peace. The philosopher George Santayana observed that solitude grows blessed and peaceful only in old age. For Robert, and for countless men like him, that blessed peace is not a retreat from life. It is life at its most authentic, its most honest, its most free. There is a practical lesson here for anyone who is approaching this stage of life, or who knows someone who is. The transition from a life of constant activity to a life of peaceful solitude is not always easy. It requires letting go of old identities. It requires facing the fears that have been buried under decades of busyness. It requires learning to be comfortable with silence, with stillness, with the absence of external validation. But the reward is immense. The man who learns to be at home with himself is a man who has found something that cannot be taken away. His peace does not depend on the approval of others. His happiness does not rise and fall with the stock market or the opinions of his colleagues. He has discovered that the source of fulfillment is not out there, in the noise of the world, but within, in the quiet of his own heart. The philosopher Socrates, who knew something about the value of a well-examined life, said that the secret of happiness is not in seeking more, but in developing the capacity for enjoying less. The older man who stays home has developed that capacity. He has learned to enjoy less noise, less drama, less pressure. And in that enjoyment, he has found a richness that the world cannot give. If you are a senior man who has found joy in the peace of staying at home, your experience is a testament to a truth that society often overlooks. Peace is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something. It is the presence of self-awareness, of contentment, of a life that has been lived and is now being savored. Your home is not just a place where you sleep. It is a place where you have earned the right to be exactly who you are, without apology, without performance, without the need to prove anything to anyone. That is not a small thing. It is one of the greatest achievements a man can attain. The philosopher Michel de Montaigne wrote that there is no place more intimate than the home, and no sanctuary more sacred than the soul. When a man has made peace with both, he has found a treasure that no amount of money or status can buy. So protect your peace, value your time, and never underestimate the quiet strength that comes from being completely at home with yourself. The outside world may not understand, but you do. And that is all that matters.